This episode of Gather and Go is sponsored by Coastal Mississippi. Play Coastal Mississippi. 62 miles of shoreline, outdoor adventures, casinos, fishing, and fantastic food. Perfect for fun-filled itineraries. Visit coastalmississippi.com and go have some fun for fun's sake. All right, everybody. My guest today is a behavioral economist who has spent years studying the psychology of travelers in destinations around the globe. She's the author of the textbook Behavioral Economics for Tourism and the founder of Behavior Smart, a boutique consulting firm focused on helping tourism organizations leverage behavioral science to drive innovation and sustainability. Milena Nikolova, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. I am so excited to be here.
It's great to have you here. You may be the smartest person we've ever had on the podcast. We'll see.
I seriously doubt that, but I hope I'm one of the more interesting ones.
I think so. Your background fascinates me. Behavioral economics fascinates me. So I'm really excited to talk to you today. Before we get into the nitty-gritty, tell our listeners how you made your way from the academic world into the world of tourism.
Actually, the whole journey is interesting, and there's two big milestones. One is how I actually managed to mix human psychology with tourism and sustainability. And the second is the transition from research to practical and the application world. So if you allow me, I'll cover both really quickly.
Yeah.
So my master's degree, my undergraduate and graduate degree were in human psychology. And it just happened so that my first job, which I started even when I was still at the university, was with an organization which was using a lot of applied psychology to help nurture a culture, the culture, the mindset, and the skills that professionals need in order to work in non-governmental organizations. This is back in the years when my home country, Bulgaria, was transitioning from being part of the socialist bloc to actually going into a market economy and democracy mode.
Wow.
And nobody in the society had the understanding of what is a third sector. There was no third sector. At the time, there was only one sector, and that was the state. So you can imagine that this project, this effort was actually tasked with basically creating an NGO sector from scratch. And I was absolutely fascinated by the fact that almost the entire team of experts who was working there were applied psychologists. And so they were taking everything that they knew about human behavior, behavior change, in order to help these ambitious people who wanted to be the front leaders of the new NGO sector to have the skills, the understanding, the culture to do that. So that was the first time that I actually decided I want to use somehow in my career psychology in an applied context. This is what drove me to in 2003 to move to the US and start a PhD in the business school of the George Washington University. And I was accepted there. I wanted it to be in consumer psychology, not sure exactly where and how to take that apply side to apply it to business. And I started looking for funding. And I was looking for scholarships, fellowships to keep me through the 5-year years of my studies because I had to leave my full-time job. And I got offered the fellowship with at the International Institute of Tourism Studies, which was housed at the Business School of GW. And it sounded interesting, exciting. It was going to help me go through the program. And the condition was that I made a supporting field of my studies tourism and sustainability. And so that's how I actually made the decision to marry the two fields. I was a novice in tourism and had a little bit of exposure to sustainability, more in the nature protection context. But that's how I started. I joined the two. And actually, when I started taking some of the tourism policy, tourism planning classes, um, I got even more interested into this because everything that I was learning from the textbooks about how we should make tourism more sustainable actually contradicted what I already knew about changing the minds and the behavior of individuals and groups.
Yeah.
So this is how I kind of married the two.
Yeah.
And then with time, I finished my PhD. I started teaching, but also doing some consulting work. Um, and with so I actually never completely left the applied world. I continued to do consulting mostly with the World Bank in different projects when I was not teaching, when we were on taking vacations and so on and so forth. And so at one point, I decided that I was really fascinated by taking what science kept accumulating as knowledge and somehow helping translate it uh, to the world of professionals because so much knowledge was staying in journals, in books, and
Mm.
it was not channeling into the industry in a way that could help professionals. While many of the answers that the two worlds were tackling were actually very similar.
Yeah.
So this is how I actually decided to completely leave academia and then use the fact that I actually speak both languages and help bridge to the extent that I can these worlds.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. It's fascinating. So you started in psychology, and I think a lot of people understand, in general, what psychology is, but I don't think as many people understand the term behavioral economics. So you referenced behavior change. Give us some more understanding of what is behavioral economics. Economics. Well, that sounds like money and currency and policy. Behavior sounds different. So what is it, and why should it matter to people in tourism?
Great question, one that I love answering always. So behavioral economics actually is a relatively new field of knowledge, which in the past 2 decades, I would say, has made a real impact to our understanding of societal dynamics. It essentially borrows what we know from behavioral sciences, whether it's human psychology, neuroscience, sociology, and overlays it with the challenges that we face in society, whether they're economic challenges or other challenges, and seeks to first understand why some things are happening and why we can solve them using conventional rationality.
Mm.
So you have, for example, applications in the context of, let's say, healthcare, where we behavioral economists would tackle questions such as, okay, given that thanks to science, we now have more knowledge than ever about what is healthy living and what we should change about contemporary lifestyle in order to live healthier, better,
Mm.
and longer. Why is it that we have such a hard time changing changing the patterns, and also why do we still see an increasing rate of deaths which are attributed to poor decisions? So people had the option of actually choosing a better outcome, and they didn't.
Mm.
So this is one context. We also have a lot of uses in the context of policy making, where you have social support programs or environmental policies or energy saving policies that do not work politicians design them with the thinking that, well, that offers enough benefits, people would pick them up, but actually they don't. Nobody applies, nobody benefits from funding schemes. And so behavioral scientists then come in and try to understand why, what prevents people or what makes them hesitant. And sometimes it turns out that it's complexity, people simply don't understand. Sometimes it turns out that it's a hassle factor. There's a fascinating case from the UK that relates to that, where the government actually pilot tested a program, energy efficiency program, helping, basically setting up a program that would provide funding for households to refurbish their houses, because their analysis showed that the biggest source of energy leakage, energy waste in essence, are poorly insulated roofs of older houses. And so the government set up a program and they said, okay, well, let's pilot test it. And, what's not to like about this? You get free money to improve your property, and then that leads to lower energy bills. So there's no reason why it wouldn't be really popular, but actually it wasn't. There was very, very low rate of pickup. And that's when the nudge unit, which the UK government had already in place, came in and actually established that people didn't take the money on the table simply because they associated roof insulation and refurbishment in the house with the hassle of having to clean up their
shingles, maybe, or their attics.
Their attic. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So people actually didn't pick up the money that was on the table simply because they associated roof insulation with the huge hassle of having to clean up their attic. So you can see that something completely unexpected can actually turn into a barrier for a policy program that can have a profound effect on energy efficiency, on environmental footprint, and so on. So behavioral scientists and behavioral economists very often find the reason why something is not working properly, and then they help institutions, businesses, or groups of entities to design a solution that actually will not create any conflict with the way that people make a decision in this particular context.
Yeah. So, how does this intersect with tourism? Because in the tourism world, we don't spend a lot of time thinking about policy. I know policy affects us, but we don't think about it a lot. But obviously, you work on this every day. So, how do these principles affect people who work in tourism?
So the use of behavioral science in tourism is profound. Actually, my dissertation and initial research interest started with how can we use knowledge about human behavior to make experiences more powerful and impactful. We have a lot of knowledge about how memories are created, what makes a memory last longer, what changes memories, what can modify what we remember about past experiences, and so on and so forth. And so to me, it was really a surprise that the tourism industry does not use that knowledge to enhance the offering, the product in the first place. So this is one big domain where some other sectors and some other industries have done a better job than tourism. And I think there's so much potential, because tourism is all about connecting people to other people and people to places in a way that then produces memories, experiences that make people happier, that make them better people, and that also create good experiences for local hosts and local communities. The bigger area where we currently see demand for this kind of knowledge is sustainability. We all know that we are at the stage where we know that moving to sustainable forms of operations is becoming non-negotiable. So now the question is how? And we see that many of the things that we've been trying for years, I would say decades, are not working.
Mm.
So the first area where, excuse me. So the first area where I see that we are making a lot of impact with um, human psychology and behavioral science insight is understanding why some of the things we have been doing for so long are not working,
Mm.
and where are the barriers that block the transition from current practices to more sustainable practices. And then the second part is, of course, what are the ways to design sustainability communications, present sustainability options, so that they actually have higher pickup rate, and they don't conflict. Actually, they're not in conflict with um, the very idea of traveling, and that's the experience.
Yeah. I want to come back to what you said about forming memories because that was fascinating. But let's follow the sustainability thread for a minute. So there's a gap between what consumers say about sustainability and then what they actually do when they travel. So you have this window into people's minds. Help us understand why that gap exists, and do you have any suggestions for how people might close the gap?
Absolutely. I see that in the past year or two, a lot of professionals in our industry are starting to use the notion of a say do gap, or an intentions action gap. Um, this is this relates to the fact that we keep seeing data coming from reliable and well-established sources in our industry saying, well, there's an increasing rate of travelers who want to be good when they're traveling. They want to travel sustainably. They want to know that they're doing the right thing while they're enjoying their holidays. And so you see these percentages rise. But at the same time, when you look at the rate of pickups or proactive choices, they're very, very far from these really impressive numbers. So the gap, that's in quantitative terms, the gap between what people want to do and what they end up doing. The main reason that we see that gap, and that it's not going to close in the next 1 or 2 years if we just sit back and keep doing the same thing, is that the way that we approach currently sustainability is in direct conflict with the main motivation of travelers,
Hmm.
and that's the desire to have an experience. People travel, even the most responsible and committed to sustainability travelers are on the road in a different destination from home in order to learn, engage, smell, sense, taste. So at every moment, sustainability comes in competition with that. It's going to be in second place.
Hmm.
Sus- Experience will always be prioritized. So this is one of the main reasons. The other reason is that actually people associate sustainability with a sense of responsibility, sense of discipline, sense of sacrifice.
Hmm.
There's multiple, sorry, there's multiple studies that show that people actually feel that there's direct conflict between thinking about sustainability and being in a state of leisure.
Hmm.
So even if at home they think about climate change and the sustainability crisis, when they're on holiday, they park that at the back of their minds, just as many other obligations. And the other thing is that when we travel, we naturally go into a state of releasing discipline. So the
Mm.
same way that I like giving a diet or a workout example, when we are at home, we all have more or less a fairly structured and strict discipline about how many times do we work out during the week, not eating sweets, or maybe eating only on special occasions, not drinking during the week, but maybe having a couple of glasses only on weekend nights and so on. But when you go on holiday, of course, you deviate from that. If you're in Italy or Spain, sure, you're going to have wine every day, probably also with lunch. If you are in Turkey or somewhere else where sweets are to die for, surely you're going to eat plenty of them.
Mm.
So, the same way, people deviate from their responsible behaviors. Even if at home they recycle diligently, they think about energy consumption and water consumption. When they're on holiday, they don't. They actually deviate from these patterns. So these are all factors that explain why it doesn't come automatic. Now, what can we do about that? Again, of course, there's different nuances and so on, but in general, we say that sustainability has to be made super easy. It needs to be almost an automatic choice because many of the decisions we make are automatic. They're driven by shortcuts. We uh, pull, a- pull and take water in a plastic bottle simply because at the moment we feel thirsty. We want to keep the conversation we're having or enjoying the view and so on. And this is the closest that's to us. So if it's a glass bottle, we're going to drink from a glass bottle. If it's a plastic bottle, it's going to be a plastic bottle. So making sustainable choices as easy as possible and also as automatic is one of the overarching strategies. The second one is making sustainable choices appealing. The easiest example that I can use to illustrate that is food. Encouraging travelers to buy more local food and to eat more local food during their holiday is one of the most demanded and attractive thing for destinations, for businesses, because on one side, it leaves more spend in the local economy.
Hmm.
It's channeled to local producers and so on. And then if it's local seasonal food, that also lowers any carbon footprint associated with transportation and imports and so on. So with food, you can either try to promote buying local as a responsible choice or as your way to do the right thing and so on, or you can simply use smart and creative descriptions to present local food in an appealing way, in an
Mm.
attractive, I would say irresistible way, so that people want to taste it because it's something that's very different from what they can have home, something that's available only 4 or 6 weeks in the year, that overlaps with their stay, something that is prepared in a very different way, unique way to the local place, and so on. So focusing on the appeal harmonizes the choice pattern with the choosing pattern that actually is over is leading traveler behavior, as we said at the beginning, because it helps people feel that this choice actually enhances the experience. So depending on what type of decisions we are talking, we either try to make them easy or more appealing.
Mm. What's the difference between that very intentional description to make something irresistible and the sort of manipulative, over the top marketing language that people sometimes use in tourism and in other fields that just leaves people feeling like, oh, that's too good to be true, or that person's just trying to sell me something, or I can't trust that? How do we craft those appealing messages in ways that are also authentic and trustworthy?
Well, just like we have good and not so great marketing in the pure commercial context, here you have to use the same model of relying on communications that are not far too disconnected or just too pompous. And this is a matter of execution. So the same type of professionals who would help you present your destination or your business in an attractive way can help put together a description that um, um, ensures that it's not too far fetched and that actually doesn't overdo it.
Mm, yeah, I love that. So, you have also talked and written a lot about how people can leverage behavioral insights to make tourism more impactful in a more positive way for destinations. So, for our listeners who represent destinations or who just care about that sort of thing, what are some ways, in addition to maybe promoting the local foods, what are some ways that they can make sure they are really making that positive impact on the destinations they visit without being overbearing in how they do it?
Well, today destinations struggle a lot with the fact that they they need to combine what they have been doing for many years, the promotion of the place as a place that people want to visit, with the growing demands of having to also meet expectations about sustainability, about local communities, respect to local cultures, and so on and so forth. So much of how you can influence the behavior of travelers, whether it's individuals or entire groups, is actually very, very valuable for travelers, for destination authorities. So let me illustrate in practical terms. I can give you a couple of examples. So imagine that you're a destination and you have a destination app. And your destination app seeks to, of course, promote visitation and so on. But you also want to use that app in order to influence where travelers go, what activities they choose. And ideally, you want to, for example, get people to venture out and away from hotspots. You want to encourage them to buy more local. You want to excite them about seasonal meals and seasonal foods and so on. How you can do that effectively so that it actually works using the technology that you already have in place is a perfect task for a behavioral scientist or for a behavioral scientist and a destination professional. We've done work like that where we would sit down and just help destination professionals figure out, okay, how can I use what I already have in order to, for example, get people to visit the many attractions that are around our city, but they somehow are in the shadow of some of these popular
Mm,
churches or sites that everybody wants to see. So we help them think through why people go to these most popular sites. What is the main reason? In many cases, it's just because, well, everywhere they check, this is what they see as suggestions. Okay, well, can we change that? Can we show them that actually there's um, a less visited spot that actually reveals more about the local culture, or there's a culinary experience or tour that will tell them a little bit about the living culture, but it also will give them a taste of the local cuisine without them having to navigate and figure out and so on and so forth. So this is one example. Another example from our practice. comes from one of the regions in Sweden, in Skåne, where the local tourism authority wanted to ensure that the events industry, so not the leisure sector, but the events industry, actually relies more on local food and showcases more of the local traditional foods in Sweden and in the region, but also the food that and the offerings that are available through local sourcing. And so with them, we sat down and help them understand, okay, how do people who come at events make choices about food, and where can we change the way that we present the options, so that we make it very easy for them to go more for the local option, rather than the traditional international imported foods that they can have anywhere, whether they're in Sweden, Spain, or Germany. So these are two examples showing how you can use knowledge first to understand why something is happening in a way that is creating a challenge for the destination, and then what might be the solutions that gently and without any frictions can actually steer travelers and traveler flows in a desired way, so that there's more spend that stays in the local economy. There's better spread of the benefits of tourism, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I love that. That's so smart. So a lot of our listeners are tour operators or people that plan tour experiences, and I would love for you to share a little bit of your insights about memory creation for them because they're in the business of creating memories for their travelers. So, what can you tell them about how memory creation works and how they can maybe hack it a little bit to make those memories better, longer lasting, more positive?
Absolutely. Well, I would focus on, because there's many aspects of memory creation. I want to focus on one thing that I know we discuss very often with tour operators, with uh, hotel people in the hospitality industry, both hotels and food service providers. And that's the fact that our contemporary culture of multitasking and living fast actually has reduced our ability to enjoy ourselves
Mm,
and to benefit from holidays. And what happens is that in many, many situations, people are on holiday, but they somehow slide on the surface of it and they do not connect to the place.
mm.
They do not connect to other people. They do not learn. They do not appreciate. They just are there. And that does not help them. They don't go home well rested. They don't go home enriched. And also, they don't leave the best footprint behind because they haven't learned, they haven't um, gained respect, they haven't talked or appreciated locals, local culture, and so on and so forth. So, to me, one of the biggest contemporary challenges that tourism professionals, tour operators, or anyone who has influence over touch points along the journey can tackle is making sure that people actually leave digital devices on the side and mindfully connect to where they are. Maybe
Mm,
not all the time. Obviously, we know that many people try to balance traveling and leisure time with the fact that they have a business going and they need to keep it on, and so on and so forth. But even for if they manage to get people to appreciate, to notice a flower, sometimes it's small things. A guide can do miracles just by planting moments of mindfulness throughout the story that they're telling, making people stop and appreciate the view for a moment, making people um, pay attention to a flower or an unusual tree. If they see that people constantly use their phones, make make people stop and take a photo,
Mm.
um, just to nudge them to actually slow down and enjoy these moments of appreciations of connecting to their surroundings. So these moments sometimes an unusual noise, an unusual sight, an unusual taste can be the most long lasting memories that people take home and remember for much longer than many of the other things that happen to them. So this is one of the things. Another piece of advice that we offer very often is to create moments to plug into the itinerary, sort of recollection um, moments at the end of each day, where you invite people, ideally at a nice space where they're staying, maybe if it's nice weather, if it's a good view at a terrace or some space, just to sit down, maybe enjoy a glass of lemonade or a glass of champagne and just talk about how the day went to the person they're traveling with or to somebody else who's in their group, just to talk about what impressed them most, what was really interesting or new or different. That helps people sort of process the day rather than just stack experience after experience. And then by day seven, they can no longer make sense and sort of pull the separate episodes. So
Mm.
small adjustments to the itinerary like that can enable and facilitate memory creation and more mindful processing and connection of the with the experience that people are having, and prevent them from really doing that superficial uh, thing of just missing on the opportunity to extract the maximum.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I love that so, so much. I'm going to have to make some changes in the way I travel based on that insight, but that is so good to hear. So for people that would love to follow you, learn more about you, get plugged in with Be Smart, how should they do that?
Thank you. Well, the easiest ways are to follow me and Behavior Smart on LinkedIn. We try to be active. We try to post content that's of help and uh, um, interest of different audiences within tourism. I also invite them to go to our website. We maintain a knowledge corner where we try to constantly upload resources, videos, webinar recordings to make them available for a wider audience. So anyone who's interested and just wants to see whether maybe there's something there, whether it's applicable to them, their business, their destination, I would really invite them to go and look at the readings, look at the resources. We have some webinar series which we have produced as part of projects that was funded by the EU, for example. We've made them available. We really try to keep some resources open and widely available to excite professionals about the benefits of understanding a little bit about how human psychology and human behavior insights can help their work and enhance the efforts that they're making.
Yeah, wonderful. We will link to all those resources in our show notes. Now, before we let you go, we have a few questions we ask everybody, and these are just for fun. So, no pressure. First question: when you travel, do you book a window seat or an aisle seat?
Window seat.
Yeah, why is that?
Um, it gives me the sense that I'm close to bigger space. And also,
Mm,
I'm actually pretty curious. And that every time that the view is not covered by clouds, blocked by clouds, actually, I'm curious to look from the window and just see what I can experience from up in the air.
yeah, oh, I love that. So, what's something in your carry-on that you would never travel without?
Hmm. I Comfortable shoes.
Mm.
I love walking. I feel that walking is the best way to experience a place. I travel more for work rather than leisure, understandably. But every opportunity I have to just experience a place I happen to be visiting, just put my walking shoes on and I just walk the streets. I don't go. I especially if I don't have time, I might not go to museums or the key sites. Just walking the streets. So that would be the one thing that I always try to have.
Yeah, very smart. So if you had a free airline pass and a week with nothing else to do, where would you head next?
Oh my god. um, I have been dreaming for some time, basically since we launched Behavior Smart, which for those who are entrepreneurs know how intense it can be. I've been dreaming of doing a yoga retreat,
Mm,
ideally in India.
mm,
So that probably would be my choice. Just
yeah.
unplugging from everything and doing the maximum of what I was just describing,
Hmm.
connecting, slowing down, and releasing everything that modern life imposes on us.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
that
well,
would be my choice.
beautiful. So the last question, what is one thing you have seen or done on the road that you wish you could go back and experience again with somebody you love?
Mm. Actually, I would say that experiencing places and generally having experiences with people you care about um, is probably the highest form of enjoying an experience. So there are many places that I get to visit as part of my work where I hope that I can go back and visit with my husband, my children, some of my closest friends. So I can't name one,
Mm,
but um, every place where I've been for work that has fascinated me, I would love to go back to.
yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This has been a pleasure, and we'll have to have you back sometime to dig into some more of your insights.
Absolutely. I would do that with pleasure. Thank you so much for the exciting questions and the fun conversation. I really hope that my insights are adding value to our audience here.
Absolutely. Thank you. Hey, thanks so much for joining us for this interview. I want to let you know that conversations like this are just part of what you will hear if you tune into a full episode of the Gather and Go podcast. When you listen, you'll get travel news you may not hear anywhere else, along with some really helpful road tips, some smart analysis, and maybe even a hot take from me about issues that are impacting travel right now. Now, you can hear this full episode along with many others by searching for Gather and Go in your favorite podcast player, or you can click on the link right below this video or one of the videos right here to my side. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again soon.